place where thy glory dwelleth. And I will bow down and bend the knee. I will kneel before Yahweh, my maker. But as for me, let my prayer be unto thee, O Yahweh, in an acceptable time, O Elohim, in the abundance of thy mercy. Answer me with the truth of thy salvation. And from Sabbath and Sabbaths, all flesh will come to bow to my face, says Yahweh. Yahweh, our power, and the power of our ancestors, may you be pleased with our rest. Sanctify us with your commandments. Grant us a share in your Torah. Satisfy us with your goodness. Cause us to rejoice in your salvation and purify our hearts to serve you in truth, in love, and favor. Yahweh Eloheinu. May you grant your holy Shabbath to us as an inheritance. Baruch atah Yahweh, who sanctifies the Sabbath. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, Yahweh. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts. We forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Bashem Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. All right, shall come. You see it. You didn't want to get no for your knees.
Let's cut my knees and my shoes.
So we're gonna pull that up too. So we're gonna run through some of the readings real quick for the Sabbath. Can y'all see me over there? Okay, thank you. All right, so you if we move too fast for you, don't worry about it. It'll be all right. I'm gonna run through these real quick. Genesis chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. Using the King James Authorized Translation. Thus the heavens and earth were finished and all the hosts of them. And on the seventh day, Elohim ended his work which he had made. And on the sixth day, Elohim ended his work which he had made. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And Elohim blessed the seventh day. You can see, so you can read it with me. Blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because it ended he had rested from all his work which Elohim created and made. All right, so next one. You might as well stay over there. Our next reading is Go to Exodus chapter 16. So from creation, Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day. Exodus 16:23. And he said, let's read it together loudly. And he said to them, this is that which Yahweh has made. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto Yahweh. Bake that which you will bake today, and seed that you will seed, and that which remaineth over, lay up for you to be kept until the morning. All right. Now from there, let's go to Exodus chapter 20. So this is telling us to have a day of preparation to prepare everything before the Sabbath. All right. So no cooking, no heating up the foods, no going out and making grits, oatmeal, banana pudding, right, on the Shabbath day. All your food is supposed to be prepared beforehand. That's the main gist whatever baking and boiling you need to do it before the Shabbat comes in. Exodus chapter 20, and let's start from verses 8 all the way down to 11. Read loudly, I want to hear you. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahweh thy power. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son nor thy daughter, thy manservant nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So he said the Sabbath day is a day to rest, not to do any labor, not to do any work. Exodus 31:12. So Sabbath day is a day of rest, a day to relax, a day to repose. Now, if you have a horse, you can ride your horse on the Sabbath day, but your horse is not supposed to be out there pulling loads and pulling lumber and all of that type of stuff. We see that when a woman said she's going to the house of the man of Elohim, and her husband said she was taking a horse over there. Exodus chapter 31, verse 12 through 17. I want to hear you. Let's read or let's chant it. And Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbath you shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am Yahweh that doth sanctify you. Ye shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you. Every one that defileth it shall surely be put to death. For whosoever doeth any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days may work be done, but in the seventh is the Sabbath of rest, holy to Yahweh. Whosoever doeth any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath to observe the Shabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Yasharallah forever. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, and in the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Right, so here we see that we cannot defile the Sabbath. That means anything taken away from the sanctity of the Shabbat day. And we cannot work on the Sabbath day. That means we cannot go and do labor around our house, painting, cleaning out gutters, going to our jobs, neither. And we see that the Sabbath is a sign between Yahweh and the children of Yasharallah. A sign is a recognition. A sign is a mark that associates you with Yahweh. And if you're not keeping Sabbath, you don't have the sign that he made between us and him. Leviticus chapter 23, verses 2 and 3. Let me hear you. Speak unto the children of Israel concerning the feast of Yahweh, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations. Even these are my feasts. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Shabbath of rest and holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Shabbath of Yahweh in all your dwellings. So people talk about like today is the day of Simon, right? Today is the day of Simon, and we have Passover. We have the Feast of Weeks coming up, Shavuot, and people are celebrating these days, all right? And two of those days are in the Bible, and all of the other holy days are in this chapter, but people take away from the importance of the Shabbat every week. So the Shabbat is the first of the holy convocations that are mentioned in the list that Yahweh gives us. Okay, let's go to Isaiah 66 and 23. Again, let's Let's hear you. Some of you, I can't hear some of y'all singing together. Reading together with everybody. Let's put some spirit behind our words. Isaiah 66, 23. All right, let's read. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, from one Shabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, says Yahweh. So we know that if we're going before Yahweh on a day of worship, you remember when we were meeting Yahweh at the mountain, not to worship him, but just to listen to him. He told us not to be with our wives, to wash our clothes, and to be clean. So we have examples about how Yahweh expects us to appear before him. So with the Sabbath being a day of rest and a day of worship, if we come before Yahweh, we cannot deliberately go out and make ourselves unclean. We cannot deliberately do something that's going to make us unpresentable before Yahweh. It's a day of worship. And of course, we know that worship means to bow down to Yahweh, right? It means to bow down, to prostrate yourself, to bend your body before Yahweh, to get on your knees or to lay out flat before Yahweh. It doesn't mean to stand up, clap your hands, and sing songs. All right, that's not worship. That's what the Bible calls praise. Worship and praise are different things. Right? Luke chapter 4, verse 16. Now, some of you have been hearing these scriptures all your life. You may know them. Luke 4:16. Say shalom when you get there. All right, Luke 4:16. Let us read together. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. So this tells us that he was from Nazareth. That's where he spent his childhood. From 3 years old, he came from Egypt, Africa, north, what Israel is, Africa. But he went Nazareth, which is a little further north, and his custom was to go into the synagogue on the Sabbath day. And if we follow him, we should do like he did. Now, we're going to go into this a little bit today. I'm not going to get too deep into it now, but we basically have two words in the Old Testament for gathering together. We have synagogue and we have ecclesia. And then in Hebrew we have redat and we have kahal, what they say kehilah today. When we go into the New Testament, we see that synagogue has been evolved into a place of meeting, and ecclesia is the word used for the body of believers, no matter where they are. So you can have a kahal or kehilah of believers, which is the people getting together or the body of people, no matter where they are. It's like we say the body of Hamashiach. Doesn't matter if you're in California or in Texas. So everybody collectively was called the kehilah or the ecclesia, and that ecclesia could meet inside of the redath or the edah, or inside of the synagogue. Okay? So the synagogue evolved into the place, and the ecclesia evolved into the name of the people, the body of believers, which means called out. And synagogue means come together. All right. So the building where we came together was a synagogue, and the people were called the ecclesia. And the ecclesia has been misnamed the church, which has a whole different origin than the word ecclesia. All right, ecclesia, which is the word iglesia in Spanish. Um, so as Luke 4:16 shows us, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and he stood up to read. So he would go in the synagogue on the Sabbath day and he would stand up to read. So the person that read the Torah on the Sabbath day was was um, expected to stand up to read, and once they wanted to expand on the scriptures, um, they would uh, they would they would sit down, and once he sat down, they would explain what it was that they had just read. Last one, Acts chapter 15, verse 21, and this is very important also. And I want everybody to bear in mind that we have and I kind of discussed this earlier this week in the house over here in this building. Um, we have three, let's call them institutions, if you allow me to use that word, happening at the same time, overlapping with each other often in ancient Israel. Okay. The highest level we have is the temple, and we see that the Israelites were participating in the temple worship, the temple services. They would go and bow down to Yahweh at the time of the sacrifices. Okay. And they would go there to pray. That's the first one. The second one is the synagogue. And in this synagogue, they would go and read the Torah. Throughout the week, they would go and study. We have that example here in Acts chapter 15, verse 21. Let's read that real quick. Let's read it together. Okay, let's go.
For Moses
Of old time, as in every city, them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Shabbath day. So we see how Mashiach going into a synagogue, okay, to read on the Sabbath day, and we see the disciples and the apostles telling us that in every city, people would go into the synagogues to read on a Shabbat day. Now, I'm trying very hard not to digress. I'm trying very hard. So, write down any comments or questions, unless you can jump in and jump out. All right, but I want to go to somebody give me the scripture real quick where it talks about they went into the temple at the hour of prayer. All right. Now we all know they went to the temple, so we don't necessarily have to go there. God is like to show and prove. All right. So they went into the temple and they went into the synagogue. So at this point, they still expecting themselves, and excuse my vernacular, I'm gonna be a little more relaxed in my lecture tonight, right? But they still expecting themselves to be part of the synagogue structure, right? Hamashiach going into the synagogue, James and them is talking about you can go into the synagogue every Shabbat day, but then they started to discriminate against the ones that believe in Hamashiach. So they started telling you, y'all ain't welcome here because y'all basically, believe he the Messiah. They couldn't trip on him too much though, because that wasn't against the Torah to believe somebody was the Messiah. All right, that wasn't against the Torah, but they were just so, aggressive, so forceful about their belief, so non-quiet, so loud about it that the synagogue leaders thought it was being disruptive. All right, so we see them now getting kicked out, and they saying, "Don't say nothing else about Hamashiach." We see this throughout the book of Acts, and they would beat them. They would beat the people at the temple area. They got beat, we know for sure. But we see Paul and them still going to the synagogues on the Sabbath day after Hamashiach after he went to the Father in the fourth dimension. All right, fourth dimension meaning where we cannot see. All right, where where height, width, depth, and spirit overlap and interact on a plane beyond our uh, detection, normal detection. So Acts 15:21, they were going into the synagogues on a Shabbath day. Everybody see that, right? So that shows us that now they had a central place to go to on the Shabbat day to meet and to read. And oftentimes they would walk to this place. It was in their own area. They didn't have to drive across town. So the challenges that we face now were not the challenges of the early believers. All right, so now we have two psalms for the Sabbath day, and then we move into the 7 verses for today. I did a cross reference with the Hebrew, the Greek, and the KJV, and we don't have too much variation in those three texts for today. So we can use the KJV for today, just so we can all, kind of read it together, and then we'll open up for a midrash. So let's write down. If you have any questions or comments, write down what you want to do, what you want to say. So everybody, get your pen, get your paper, or open up your tablets, your phones, write down your questions, or try to remember. I bring a notebook and some pencils, some notebook and some pens out from in there, okay? Or somebody going to get some notebook and pencils. So if you got something that you want to say, notebooks should be on the shelf on the right hand side. If you need paper and a pencil, it'll be up here, for you to get if you want to write down whatever you want to say. And you all at home, questions, comments, go ahead and write that down. Also, we on here, right? All right. And somebody do me a favor and jump over to YouTube and Facebook and make sure we broadcasting okay. All right, so Psalms chapter 38, which is also a psalm for the Sabbath day. All right, Psalm 38. Let's go there, please. Everybody go to Psalms 38. All right, Psalm chapter 38 in your Bibles, which is a psalm for the Sabbath also. You see this in your Greek Bible, but it's not labeled in the English Bibles. It just says remembrance. 38, is that right? Was right, Mario? It's 38, right? That's what you read earlier? Rebuke me not in your wrath, neither chase me in your hot displeasure. Okay. Now, everybody, let's put a little sing song on here. What we'll do is I'll do the first half. I'll do the first comma or colon, and then you all come and do that last part to the end of the verse, and then I'll start off that top of the verse again. Everybody got that? Okay. Psalm 38. All right. O Yahweh, rebuke me not in thy wrath.
Neither chasten me in thy hot displeasure.
Beautiful. For thine arrows stick fast in me.
And thy hand presseth me sore.
There is no soundness in my flesh because of thine anger.
Neither is there any rest in my bones because of my sin.
For mine iniquities are gone over mine head.
As a heavy burden, they are too heavy for me.
My wounds stink and are corrupt.
Because of my foolishness,
I am troubled, I am bowed down greatly.
I go mourning all the day long.
For my loins are filled with my loathsome disease.
And there is no soundness in my flesh.
I am feeble and sore broken.
I have roared by reason of the disquietness of my heart.
Yahweh, all my desire is before thee.
And my groaning is not hid from thee.
My heart panteth, my strength faileth me.
As for the light of mine eyes, it also is gone from me.
My lovers and my friends stand aloof from my sore.
And my kinsmen stand afar off.
They also that seek after my life lay snares for me.
They that seek my hurt speak mischievous things and imagine deceits all the day long.
But I, as a deaf man, heard not, and I was as a dumb man.
Not his mouth,
Thus I was as a man that heareth not.
and in whose mouth are no reproofs.
For in thee, O Yahweh, do I hope.
Thou wilt hear Yahweh my Elohim.
For I said, hear me, lest otherwise they should rejoice over me.
When my foot slippeth, they magnify themselves against me,
For I am ready to halt.
and my sorrows continually before me.
For I will declare mine iniquity.
I will be sorry for my sin.
But mine enemies are lively, and they are strong.
And they that hate me wrongfully are multiplied.
They also that render evil for good are mine adversaries.
Because I follow the thing that good is.
Forsake me not, O Yahweh.
O Elohim, be not far from me.
Make haste to help me.
O Yahweh, my salvation.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. As we turn to Psalm 92, it's a very I'm excited because as I get older, I start to pay more attention to things. I start to investigate and look at things better. And what we just did, it's something called antiphony or antiphonal. All right. That's when you have sounds. Anti means what? Against something, right? So you have two sounds, phonal sounds against anti. It's not a bad thing, but you have, in other words, what we call what? What do we call that in the black church growing up? What do we call that? Um, a little, a little more basic. We call that look, huh? There you go, call and response. We didn't know this in slavery, in captivity, but as we evolved into Protestant type church backgrounds and not having much interaction with the Catholic background, we went ahead and said, we're going to start doing this. So we have a natural call and response. So these psalms, when you research it, were meant to be read in a call and response type of fashion. They weren't meant to be read by one person, and they weren't meant to be sung just by one person. Then you have choirs that were singing these things, these songs, and they were kind of bouncing off of each other. And what we're doing is a very easy and primitive way of doing it. Very kind of unstructured. Is just when I stop, you pick up in each verse, and then we go to the next. We go to the next verse. Con? So we're moving into a first century biblical cultural practice that goes back to 3,000 years to the time of King David. This is how the Psalms were meant to be heard and sung by people. Okay, so and of course you're saying one thing, and then somebody else is saying something else, and you don't necessarily have to have it as one person. You could have it as five people against five people. All right. Now the reason we're doing it like this is because there's no structured. There's no structure. It is it is our harmony of Baba Kamalek. So you're right on that, but the particular style is a call and response. But since we don't have a rhythm of how we're going to say the notes, it's easy for just one person to say it until you kind of get familiar. Normally, you have somebody will go up and then the respondents would go down. So you'd say, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So it's one note, then you go up and down. So let's go to Psalms 92, and we'll do this for the Shabbath day. All right? Everybody ready? It is a good thing to give thanks unto Yahweh,
Sing praises unto thy name, O Most High,
to show forth thy loving kindness in the morning,
and thy faithfulness every night.
upon an instrument of 10 strings and upon the psaltery.
Upon the harp with a solemn sound.
For thou, Yahweh, hast made me glad through thy works.
I will triumph in the works of thy hands.
O Yahweh, how great are thy works!
And thy thoughts are very deep.
A brutish man knoweth not,
Neither doth a fool understand this.
when the wicked spring as the grass, and when all the workers of iniquity do flourish.
It is that they shall be destroyed forever.
But thou, O Yahweh,
Forevermore.
for lo thy enemies, O Yahweh, for lo thy enemies shall perish.
All the workers of iniquity shall be scattered.
But my horn shalt thou exalt like the horn of a unicorn.
I shall be anointed with fresh oil.
Mine eye also shall see my desire on my enemies.
And my ears shall hear the desire of the wicked rise against me.
The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree.
Shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon.
Those that be planted in the house of Yahweh shall flourish.
In the courts of our Ohio.
They shall still bring forth fruit in old age.
They shall be fat and flourishing.
Altogether, to show that Yahweh is upright, he is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him. Hallelujah. I'll give yourselves a round of applause. All right, now, if you are, let's go into the scriptures now. If you want to go to YouTube or Facebook, you will see the scriptures that we're going to be going into. For this reading, 7 verses. And then remember, after we do these 7 verses, we're going to have a brief midrash. Okay. So these are the 7 verses. All right, let's go. Now, I got the paper for the 7 verses from the Septuagint of Roth and Hanhart. And then the Leningrad Codex from the Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia. All right, but we're going to use the King James, but we have the Hebrew and the Greek transliteration and the Hebrew letters on YouTube and on Facebook if you want to go there and follow. So let's go to Leviticus chapter 25, verse 14. And also, if you're using the King James, it'll allow you to look and see if there are any places where what we're reading doesn't line up with the Hebrew and the Greek versions. All right, so Leviticus chapter 24, chapter 25. Let's start with verse 14, and we're going to go to verse 20. And actually, you know what? We're going to do this the same way. It's not wrong with experimenting, right? With the word and how we share it with each other. All right, so let's do it the same thing again. And if thou sell aught unto thy neighbor, or buyest aught of thy neighbor's hand,
You shall not oppress one another.
according to the number of years after the Jubilee, thou shalt buy of thy neighbor.
According to the number of years shall sell unto you.
According to the multitude of years, thou shalt increase the price thereof.
According to the fewness of years, thou shalt diminish the price of it.
For according to the number of years of the fruit doth he sell unto thee. Ye shall not therefore oppress one another.
Thou shalt fear thou my, for I am hungry of my.
Wherefore ye shall do my statutes and keep my judgments and do them.
Ye shall dwell in the land in safety.
And the land shall yield her fruit.
And ye shall eat your fill and dwell therein in safety.
And if ye shall say, what shall we eat the seventh year?
Behold, we shall not sow, nor gather in our increase.
Okay, Con, so that's the reading for this Shabbat. Now, I hope you can follow me on YouTube or on Facebook. The first verse, okay, we're gonna just jump right into it. The first verse is telling us to be reasonable, fair and reasonable in commerce. Don't price gouge or lowball. Everybody repeat after me. Be fair and reasonable in commerce and business. Don't price gouge or lowball. Now we're gonna run through the brief commentary, and then we'll go back and discuss each one. Con, if that's okay with you all. Verse 15. Compensate for the loss of profit of the buyer. Everybody, say it with me. Compensate for the loss of profit of the buyer. Verse 16. All right, verse 16, same thing. Compensate for the loss of profit of the buyer. Verse 17, verse 17 is the same as verse 15. Be fair and reasonable in commerce. Don't price gouge or lowball. Don't oppress each other. This is in the context of generally speaking, but specifically in the context of business, land, money. And we're going to get into what this means, the importance of it. Con? Verse 18. What does verse 18 mean? What are we extracting from verse 18? Everybody say, obedience gives you Yahweh's protection.
Obedience gives you Yahweh's protection.
Now I have written here, obedience yields Yahweh's civil and societal protection. Civil and societal. Civil and civics, that's the government structure, the components of society. And society is how the people live, what they do, what they eat, and things like that. Right? Verse 19, same thing. Obedience yields Yahweh's agricultural blessing and our appreciation. All right. Everybody understand that? Obedience gives us Yahweh's blessings of agriculture, and obedience makes us appreciate what Yahweh has done. Come. Now, let's go on to verse 20. We discussed this briefly last week. What happens? Now, the answer is going to be revealed to us tomorrow from the scriptures, but we'll talk about it now. What happens on the seventh year? Well, the 6th year, Yahweh gave you enough that would last you until that 9th year harvest. All right. So the 6th year, you got enough for the 7th year. You couldn't plant nothing. That 8th year, you planted your harvest, and then that 9th year, all right, you had something in store already. So now you are gonna harvest on the 8th year. You're gonna get that harvest throughout the when you first come into. Remember, Abib starts a new year. So when you plant Abib, from the When you plant a beeb from that 8th year, you get your harvest, all right? But then that harvest is gonna go into eating when you go into a beeb again. So it's gonna your store is gonna still be enough to hold you over it. And that's the point. That's the answer. Yahweh will bless the land, which takes us back into verse 19, which is what? Obedience yields Yahweh's agricultural blessing and our appreciation. Con? Now, let's go midrash it. Um, Open floor. I'm only here to mediate. I'm only here to keep the peace and to monitor the time. Open mic. All right. Kwamalek, Masha, Jay, Khadijah, Shara, Ariashan, Zayatan, Amaria. Floor is open for commentaries. We can do a verse for verse. Commentaries on verse 14. When we talked about price, first we'll take questions if you didn't understand something, and then we'll go into the commentary. Does everybody know what price gouging or lowballing is? If you raise your hand if you know, if you don't know price gouging or lowballing. Price gouging, who remembers COVID? All right. What was America doing and what was Turkey trying to do with the hand gel? What were they doing? Huh? What?
Overcharge.
They were overcharging, right? Raising the prices because the demand went up, right? So they said more demand, so we got to raise the price so we can make more money. That's price gouging. In principle, Yahweh tells us not to do that. In principle, Yahweh tells us not to price gouge. But right now, we're talking about the land. All right. Oh, you know what? I know I got the last piece of land. So if you want to use my land to make $10,000, I'm gonna charge you $9,000. So you're only making $1,000. Take it or leave it. That's price gouging. Okay. That's price gouging. When you charge somebody too much money for what they want to buy. Okay? Opposite of that is lowballing. Lowballing means that you have the money and you want to buy something. So you come to me, you know that I'm poor, and you say, look, man, I'm gonna make $10,000 off this land, but I can really only afford to give you 1,000. I really only afford to give you 500. That's lowball. Okay, that's a lowball. That's a lowball. So you're supposed to have a what? Fair market value for what you're buying and what you're selling. Okay? You got to make money, but you're not supposed to price gouge or lowball people. So that's what price gouging and lowballing is. So now, anybody got any questions on that? Kan la'am. Okay, now the floor is open now for commentary or further midrash on verse 14. Okay, moving on to verse 15. What does verse 15 mean? Verse 15.
All praise to the Most High. May I make a,
Con.
you know, the setting of price by market forces is typically in America established by the workings of the Keynesian model. There's some other models out there, but Maynard Keynes came with the basically when it comes to economics, came up with the system of based on the demand of the market. There should be what is called a market price,
Right.
and as such, that's established by what I'll just call it by these invisible hand forces.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the price of gas, right?
Right.
And I believe now the price gouging that we're experiencing is indeed based on a shortage of the so-called available oil. My wife, Shebrew Winnie, was telling me that we need to make sure we have our pathway set in terms of the gas tanks, because in the southeast they are having no oil be delivered to these gas stations because there is none. When it comes to petrol, I'm saying oil, but petrol is based on the conversion of petroleum, or I should say, gas is based on the conversion of petrol. And Jay Abraham, you and I were talking about how some Hebrews, I'm assuming Hebrews, have the ability to convert naturally plastics into the fuels that we need. And so some of these dynamics are false, and we actually have the ability to convert and manufacture our own. Jay, if you don't mind explaining what you were saying earlier about Julian.
Yeah, it's called plastiline.
Plastic. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, if he's doing that, which I saw Julian, and he's selling it for, I believe $4 a gallon. That's what he's selling it for, $4. When I heard him on an interview, he's selling it $4 a gallon. So the principle in verse 14 is, no matter if you're buying or no matter if you're selling something, that you got to be fair and reasonable, in commerce. Now, if you're producing something from waste, through a process that you have machinery to build it, at this point in time, you probably shouldn't be charging the same as a whole global international commodity is charging. Okay. So that kind of would be an example of it's getting real close to price gouging. It's getting real close. That $4 a gallon is what you're paying, for gas at the pump, maybe between $4 and $5 right now. In some places, I don't know. Mexico is subsidizing their gasoline prices since the price did go up. So the people are not paying at the pump according to the global economy. They're paying the same prices, and the government is paying the difference in that price spike of the gasoline. Now, remember, Mexico privatized their gasoline probably about 9-10 years ago. So they allowed companies to come in. It used to be Pemex, Mexican Petroleum Company. So there's no way Julian, that is an example of price gouging. He should not be charging the same as Exxon and BP just because he couldn't, just because he can, from the plastic, from the plastic waste. So the focus of the verse is, in the Hebrew, it tells you when you shall sell something, and when you shall sell something to your neighbor, and when you shall buy from the hand of your fellow. All right, you shall not oppress, you shall not overextend, is the word that it would be kind of related to, that price. You shall not overextend or go beyond a reasonable price. Of course, we're talking with about land, but of course it goes into it goes into other areas also in terms of the letter of the law, and now we look at the what the spirit, the spirit of the law. So what Julian should do is bring the price down and make it affordable for people instead of just reflecting what's at the pump.
Especially if I may comment on this point real quick.
Con.
Especially if he's talking about his Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters, if he associates and identifies as.
Right. Amen. Amen.
Because it says neighbor.
Right.
That what that means?
Right. Con. Exactly. Now, you do notice, and I have to be, you do notice, when we looking at la clean, the Hebrew word makes it seem like of your somebody that's kind of your people, but the Greek word is a little more generic. In other words, the Greek word means neighbor indeed, but the Hebrew word is a more limited word, But we understand the gist of what we're talking about. You're talking about people in your country that you want to get land from, and you have to give them a fair price. Because remember, the Most High also tells us, even if it was only talking about Israelites, it also tells us not to that we have to love who? The stranger. That we can't oppress the stranger, do the stranger wrong. So we can't price gouge just because the person isn't from America or isn't from our ethnic group. And they do that in a lot of countries. Now, going back to what you were saying about the model of supply and demand and setting of the prices, when I lived in Turkey, let me tell you something. When I lived in Turkey, there's not one thing in Turkey that was not, there was not one common commodity, because I only really investigated the common commodities, clothes, shoes, food, gasoline, gas, things like that. There was not any commodity, normal commodity in Turkey that was not what I would consider to be reasonably priced. Even at the restaurants, everything was reasonably priced. Everything was reasonable. Now, in Mexico, they control the price of tortillas. You got to pay 10 or 22. Everybody charges the same price unless it's a specialty item. All right, you're going to pay more. But the machine-made tortillas, same price across the board. In Turkey, same price across the board. Everything was the same fair prices. The quality determined if the price went higher or lower. Con? Everybody remember that? Everything was affordable. I mean, you could feed. Listen, what I'm about to tell you, and this is why I talk about Turkey so much. Okay, 12, 13, 14. 14 people could eat sufficient fruits and vegetables and have enough left over on $14 a week. As a wise man once said, did I just say that? Did I just say that? $14, 14 smackaroos, 14 greenbacks. All right, 14. Nobody was really being greedy. The prices were set. Nobody was trying to get rich off of making money from you. There was no foreigner price and local price. And the reason I say this is because Turkey is very ideal for many things that we read about in the Bible. There was no price gouging. and there was no real like lowballing that I saw. I didn't sell nothing, but I definitely was buying stuff. There was no, oh, you from America, you're gonna buy, you're gonna pay more. All right. There was no, oh, you from America, we're gonna charge you more for the taxi, and if it was maybe, I don't remember anything specifically, but there was something here and here and something maybe here and there. All right. Only thing was maybe similar to that was you as a foreigner coming in there, and now you got to get another phone, or you got to pay phone service. All right. So anyway, that's my point. The price gouging.
Marshall has a.
Masha, go ahead. The water moderator, Baba Kwamalek.
It was just a simple question. I was just wanting to know where we're at because I'm in the Nets Bible.
Okay, in the Nets, we're in a verse 15. Well, we're discussing verse 14, the first verse of the reading.
Leviticus?
Yeah, Leviticus 25:14. I did my initial study. Well, I read the Hebrew first, the whole reading for this week. I read the Hebrew first, and then I went back and read the Nets. So I did read the Nets also. So it's telling us the same thing. If you sell to your neighbor or acquire from your neighbor, let not a person oppress the neighbor or like overextend. All right, that's verse 14. So these are just general principles, Shakar, in Mayan Shabbat, right, Shakar? Now, verse 15, we got to run through this because it's getting late. Verse 16, compensate for the loss of profit of the buyer. Let's talk about that. What does that mean? What does that mean? Anybody want to give a stab at that? What that means? Anybody want to open the floor with their understanding of that or share anything quickly about what that means? That verse, according to the number of years from the March cycle, you shall acquire from your neighbor. According to the number of years of produce, he shall sell to you. What does that mean? That means, go ahead.
Does it imply some kind of discount or some kind of makeup for
You going?
a loss? No, whoa, stop! I just remembered something. All praise to the Most High Yahweh. Our Abba Yah reminded me that Spirit reminded me that this is all in light of the year of Jubilee, ain't it?
The 50-year cycle.
Yeah. So when a person has bought something of lesser value because it is in a discounted year, it sounds like they should be made up, that they should be given a kind of discount, or it should be considered of what they lost. And that's really the spirit of our Most High, to offer in this year of Jubilee fairness in trade, such that a person that is experiencing loss because they bought it for a certain at a value that's now discounted because it's been Jubilee discounted, that person should be made up for that loss. I didn't think about this, as you can tell, but I sense that's what our Most High Power is trying to teach us.
Right, exactly. And it's very it's very socialist. So what this means is, according to the number of years after the March cycle, you shall acquire from your neighbor. That means that if I have, let's say, for example, if I got 2 years left for the cycle to end, you're gonna let me use that land according to those 2 years. Right, year number 40, year number 48 and 48 and 49, 50 year goes back. So 48 and 49, right? Let's say now you have to put everything in context, everybody, and this is the hard part for us. The context is agricultural productivity. The context is the land yielding enough to be profitable to me as a buyer. So now, let's say now, there's 2 years left. I can get 2 more years out of this before Jubilee comes. All right. So now, if on average, I know I can make $35,000 in those 2 years combined, you have to give me a reasonable price to use that land. It could be it could be 8,000 a year. It could be 5,000 a year. How rocky is it? How hilly is it? How fertile is it? How strong is the fence? Is there water on the land? There's several factors, all right, that go into determining how much I'm going to pay you, all right, what my profit margin is going to be, all right. So now, according to the number of years, by the number of years of the Jubilee, you shall buy from your fellow. So you're my fellow. I'm buying this land for you for the last 2 years of the Jubilee. All right. According to the number of years for the harvest. Okay. For the harvest, how much food, how much productivity can I get from my goats, from my sheep? How much linen can I plant on this? See, this is business. This not talking about you buying this land and you just gonna let it sit just to go, camping on or whatever. You might have a scenario like that, but according to when we look at verse 16, it tells us, according to the greatness of years, you will increase the purchase price. So Jubilee ain't gonna be for another 10 years. So you got to compensate me for 10 years. I got to pay you for 10 years of using your land. According to the fewness of years, you diminish the purchase price. Now, when it says purchase price, okay, when it says purchase price, what is you're buying the use of the land. This is not a permanent sale. This is more like a lease. It's almost like you go to rent a car. Well, I paid for this, right? You say, I paid for this. I paid for this car. You didn't pay for the car. You paid to use the car. You purchased, your credit card runs through as a what? A sale. So you're not paying for the car or paying for the field. You're paying to use that car. You're paying to use that field. So even though we see purchase price, it's not a permanent sale. All right. So now you increase or diminish according to the yields. So if I can get 4 harvests, and those 4 harvests are going to make me 35,000, you and I have to talk about how much I'm going to give you for letting me use that land, okay? And we have to take many things into consideration. Now, remember, we can't price gouge and we can't lowball. So both of us are given a prime directive in verse number 14. Don't try to get over on your brother. Don't try to get over on the people that you're doing this business with for this land. Everybody understand that? So it has to be a proportionate thing. All right, Carmelette?
Slakia for me not comprehending impact of the year of Jubilee, could you take a few minutes, maybe two, that overviews the economic impact of how Hashem, I said Hashem, you know that's my white boy school.
Hashem Kodesh. We can say Hashem Kodesh.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
The holy name.
Hashem Elyon. Hashem Elyon. All right. The name of the God Most High.
Thanks for bringing me back. The purpose of the year of Jubilee as a benefit for Israel, I think I, in my city boy ways, have forgotten what the impact was supposed to be and how.
Well, we didn't get there yet.
Okay.
but we'll jump ahead a few verses. The purpose of it is that everybody is entitled to a permanent homestead. The homestead never leaves your family perpetually. The homestead can always be returned every 50 years. That's the purpose of the Jubilee or the Yabal. That Jubilee actually means ram, which is, alluding to the ram's horn that was blown, which is probably different than the normal shofar. All right. So it wasn't so that horn being blown means next year, remember, it was blown in the 49th year. So next year, this family is going to get their land back. Nobody owes nobody no more money. All right, so it returns to the family. So that is the purpose of the Jubilee. There's two types of Jubilee. There's Jubilee, the sound and the ram's horn, and there's Jubilee, there's the Jubilee, which is the actual act of you having your land returned to you. Now, this is if you sold your land to somebody, for 50 year, for 50 years, or for 7 years, or for 2 years. See, you didn't have to see one person didn't just keep the land forever. You could say, okay, this year you're going to use it. Let's say I'm 53 years old. When I was 3 years old, my father could have said, okay, we're going to let you use this land 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. And then let's say when I get 20 at the 23rd year of the Jubilee, right? Let's say I tell my father, hey, I want to use this land. I want to plant XYZ on here. We can make XYZ. And my father would say, well, we may lose some money, the first couple of years, but you'll get the knack of it and know how to make money on that third and fourth, fifth year. You can make, some more money. So, or he may say, you know what? We're not going to make this money by farming this land ourselves. We're going to go ahead and run these leases, right? We're going to run this lease for another 10 years. Now, Mikael down the way over here, he got a field that's been just sitting there, good land, but nobody wants to lease it because you got to go up and down that hill too much. Now, what you could do is improve the land, put some steps or put a roadway there. We could pave it. We got our aggregate soil and our aggregate rocks over here. We could pave it for next to nothing, and he'll give us a good deal on that. And you could lease that land for the next, let's get a 3-year lease and see how you can use that land to make money, son. See, these are things that happen. This is the reality of our farming society. Country folks. We were country folks and we had city houses, but we always had our land in the country that would come back to us. Every 50 years it reverted back. Now, what you did with that land in that 50-year cycle, was up to you. So basically, everybody if you live over 50 years, you see what's happening with that land and if you're going to use it or not. So that's the significance of the year of of um, of Jubilee. The land goes back to you. The land goes back to your family once that Jubilee happens, and that's gonna be Yobel, Yobel, Yo. I say Yo. That's how you say it in Spanish. Yobel. So it went back to you at the Yobel, at the Jubilee. Okay. Now that was verse what? Verse 16. Now verse 17 again reiterates. Masha, go ahead.
So very quick question, right?
Okay.
Because I just want to make sure I get this.
No problem.
So during those 50 years, so are you saying that land is like are you saying that the land was like somebody is pretty much like leasing that land, and then the 50th year that land is given back to that family?
Yes, but let me clarify one thing. You didn't have to lease it for only 50 years. You could lease it for 10 years, for 5 years, for 15 years to different people. But no matter who had it for how long, how many leases you had, it would go back to your family every 50th year. Does that help?
Oh, yeah, that helps.
Every 50th year. So you always had land. And what happens, you and now remember, you could also say, you know what, you didn't have to lease all your land. You know, if you got 100 acres, you could just say, you know what, we're gonna lease 90, and we're gonna leave 10 acres for our family to always have a place to live and to have food. Live and food. So you didn't have to lease the whole land. All right. So let's remember that also. You didn't have to lease every piece you had. So you could always just keep some, for yourself. And the scriptures say if you need money, now you can lease that land to somebody, but you never gave up your ability to be self-sufficient permanently. Okay. You always had a way. You remember, you're born during that cycle. And you may say, well, look, man, I know we need this money, but I'd rather have this land to grow my food and lease some of that land than to lease all that land. And I want to make a clarification too. You didn't necessarily get all that land money. Let's say you got, and this is very realistic. Let's say you can make $20,000 off of that land at the beginning of a 50-year lease. 20,000, all right, times 10 is 200,000. By the time 50 years expires, that land would have, not taking into consideration inflation, that land would be producing minimally $1 million if it can make 20,000 a year. So you could break it up into 10-year cycles or 5-year cycles, but we probably didn't have the type of inflation, price increases like we have now. And I've thought about this, and this is a slight, this kind of off track a little bit, but if society is built to have a gradual inflation, I don't think ancient society was like that. In other words, it goes from 4,000 to 4,000 for a house, to 40,000 for a house, to 300,000 for a house, to $1 million for a house. And it just keeps going up and up and up and up. And there's really no logical, rational reason for it, right? There's no logical, rational reason. It's the same dirt. What the price goes up because people are using more raw materials, trying to do less work, and hire people to do more work for them. So the people got to get paid. So you're paying for the price of 300 people working in a factory to get you those shoes. You're not paying. I can get a pair of shoes made down here for maybe $25, $30, maybe $25, $30, custom made shoes. All right. I can get that, you know, but if you buy that same shoe from a factory, it's gonna cost. So anyway, Masha, I don't want to go too far off the beaten track. The point was that you always get access to that land, and if you fell on hard times, it was there for you, and you never gave up that land forever. That's why Yahweh tells us in verse 14, you know, be fair. Then he talks about how to determine what you're going to pay for the land, the formula. And then he tells you in verse 17, again, 14, warning, 15 and 16, how to compensate the price you pay for the land. Verse 17, warning again. Don't price gouge each other. Be fair. Don't oppress. Don't press down on, you know, your don't press down on your brother. Or okay, Masha?
Khan, I got you.
Okay.
The water.
Ayanda
Yeah,
Ba.
yeah. And if I may be heard on this one point, again, I believe the spirit of the Shabbat or the Shabbat of Shabbat
Right.
is intended to help us understand that in the universal application of the wise economic interactions of the Israelites were supposed to be fair.
Right.
And that's why we even have the Shabbat.
Right.
So we can understand we got 6 days to work this stuff out. And in the seventh day, we're compelled, in fact, ordered, not lift a finger, because the Most High is going to provide for us and supply for us.
Exactly. That's every 7 years we see his power.
So,
Well, I'm sorry, every 7 years, but in the 6th year of the cycle, we see that abundance coming in.
Now, I have a wrecking ball midrashic, possibly idiotic question. Is this a time for that to be heard, or do we wait till later or tomorrow?
I mean, in the context of the verse that we read.
So in this verse that we read, which is speaking of the Shabbat of the Jubilee, it is applicable.
Okay, we can dive into it. I mean, if you want to bring a peripheral element into the midrash, bring it on.
Yeah. So we have a habit in this house of study to refer to the so-called apocryphal books or the hidden books. Like for example, Baruch, my new favorite book
Right.
of wisdom. Not new to everybody else, just as new to me. There's also the so-called Book of Jubilees that has the same naming connotation that also, I believe, is observed throughout the Ethiopic congregations. sometimes called, I think, Little Genesis or I forgot what they call it, but
Yeah, sometimes they call it the Little Genesis.
yeah. And this is a book that I think also correlates to what the Most High Elyon is doing with regard to the computation of years. In fact, it even says that in the beginning and the prologue of this book. And when I say the computation of years, I mean since the beginning of time. And this book is dispensed, I believe it, I'm looking off in the space for remembering. I'm not reading right now. But it starts off with the Israelites having crossed the Red Sea, leaving Mitzrayim, to the point where Moshe is called up and given this book of Jubilees. So it doesn't only include the years of the so-called Shabbat day, but it is the book of all the Shabbats from the beginning of time and their computation. That's how I interpret the introduction and the explanation of that book, the Book of Jubilees.
Okay.
What do we learn from this hidden book that applies to this specific Shabbat of the Jubilees altogether, if any?
I think when you deal with the book of Jubilees, I think the main thing you can extract from it is pretty much going to be the detail to the 50s. That would be kind of the main piece of it. But my criticism of the book would be that it presents a narrative that disrespects the obedience. It critiques the moon, and it criticizes her obedience to Hashem El Elyon. It says that she will be disobedient and that the sun will be used to calculate the years, now from now on, which makes it seem like it wasn't really presented from the perspective, Total Rabbi, that it presents itself. So I would limit it to the 50. I would refer to it as more, I would refer to Baruch as apocryphal. I would refer to Maccabees as apocryphal. However, they weren't always apocryphal. They got extracted and then they got reinserted back into the Septuagint. The Jubilees and Enoch, for example, they never made it into our Mediterranean Hebrew collection of canonical books as a community. They were more or less for private readings. People would, look at them and review them, but we knew that there were things in there that contradicted the bona fide books, such as speaking about Baruch's leader Jeremiah. Baruch was Jeremiah's scribe. Jeremiah tells us that the sun and the moon will always be the ordinances that they were created to be, or else Yahweh's covenant with us will be no more. But then when you go into Jubilee tells us that the moon is no longer a respected ordinance because it's going to fall short and we're going to have to start using the sun. So that would be my criticism of the book of Jubilee and several like things that I've read in the book of Jubilee with my own eyes. But the cycles of the 50s would be the extent of the doctrinal authority that I would give to the book of Jubilee. All of the other books of the Septuagint and the Nets, I would give 100% doctrinal authority to it. These books inside of the Nets, inside of your standard King James Bible, also, as well as some of the books that are missing from the King James. But inside of this Nets, the New English translation of the Septuagint, it has all of the books that the communities accepted. See, these things, now, I would say this though, the Ethiopian Bible that they have now was translated into Ge'ez from Aramaic, Hebrew, and Greek. Primarily, we had a couple of ways. We had the way that the Hebrews had when we got down there, which did not include the book of Jubilees. We had a very short volume of books because of our early migration. And then as time went on, we had more access to other Israelite communities. Remember the book of Esther talks about from India to where? To Ethiopia. You had Jews there. So we had a diaspora community there already. But remember now, in the early centuries of Axum kingdom, they deliberately shut out missionaries, shut out foreign representatives of religious bodies, and they broke away from the Egyptian Coptic church. See, the Coptic church was originally where the Israelites were at in a large literary community. All right, stationed at Alexandria, and then we went down to Ethiopia. So we have two different communities developing in Ethiopia. We have the Hebrew community, and then we have the Coptic / Tewahedo or Orthodox community developing there. So we have different canons kind of merging. And what Ethiopia did was they said, now the Ethiopian church was different than the Beta Israel community. So what they did, right. So they said, okay, this book, we're not going to filter through the different books that everybody's using, because you had the Quorum community, the Dead Sea community had different books. You had some of the believers in the first century didn't use certain books. Some of the people didn't use the Hebrew anymore. They were using the Septuagint. And they said, you know what? We're going to just take all of these books and we'll let the readers, kind of filter through which ones they want to use and which ones they don't want to use. But that's a whole different discussion. But my answer to the question is that it's very good reading, and it's good for reiterating the 50-year Jubilee cycles. But from a doctrinal Jubilee perspective of the calculation of the Jubilees and the months and the festivals and the feasts based on the sun and not the moon, that is a contradiction of what King David wrote, of what even Yahweh said, as well as what Jeremiah said as well as what even Esther said, because the whole book of Esther centers around the new moon, right? The new moon of Adar, not the solar month of Adar. It still uses the same biblical framework language, which tells you that they didn't apply the doctrines that we see being presented in the book of Jubilees. They stuck with the and I don't like to use this word necessarily, but they stuck with the community, let's say it like that. They stuck with the community collective canonical books and said, we're not gonna use a different calculation method. So it's good for the 50, but using it as a reference on how to keep time in general, it's not good, and it's not as authoritative. Well, it's not authoritative at all, because because Jeremiah, David, Esther, Moses, they're all using the moon. But when you get into Jubilee, it tells you in no uncertain terms, stop using the moon and start using the sun now, which puts in question its authoritative authenticity. If you kind of get my drift.
I do, but I want to, if it's okay to be heard on this, the book of Big Genesis, i.e. the book of
Bereshit, right?
explains that and I'm doing this off the dome, so
It's all right.
if I'm not correct, that the moon is for the keeping of the months, and that these are the lights that were created, I believe, on
The fourth day,
the fourth day,
right?
and that the stars and the sun is for the keeping of the years. Am I off in my analysis and recall, Laquan?
If you're only using Genesis, we can't get that from Genesis 1 verses 14 through 16. We only get the background of the stars, known as the circular stars or the constellations. Let's not go outside of Genesis. We have two different creations of lights in Genesis, verse 14 and then verse 15 and 16. Verse 14 are the lights in the firmament, and those are given for sign, season, days, and years. All right, so those are configured for sign, season, for sign, season, days, and years. Now, that's the backdrop. Those are created first. Those are the lights off in the distance. Now we have the sun and moon to rule the day and to rule the night. And then the scripture tells us he made the stars also. In verse 14, he tells us that what he's created was good. So we have an additional creation on the fourth day of sun, moon, and stars that we read about in verse 15 and verse 15 and verse 16. So in Genesis 1, we don't have any assignment. Only assignment we have in Genesis 1 are days and years. We don't have months yet being assigned. So days and years, and of course, weeks. But we really don't have the assignment of weeks until we get into Genesis chapter 2, when it tells us about the seventh day. But we have the methodology of counting these days to count the weeks, culminating in the next chapter, chapter 2. But on that fourth day, we do have lights in the firmament being created, although they are created independently. So when we go into verse 15, it tells, when it going to verse 15, it said that he made these lights and it was so. So that happened. Now we're going to verse 16. It says now he made additionally, right? He made big lights, small lights, and he made stars. So we have two different segments of creation. We got these one lights that are for signs, season, days, and years in verse 14 and 15. And then in verse 16, we have the sun, moon, and the stars. Now, as we go further on into Genesis, now we see this word being used for the moon, the Kodesh, being used. But the principles we see, the sun. I think once we go into once we get further into Psalms, we get a little more specific language as in terms of this is the function of the moon. But we never see the sun associated with any long-term biblical timekeeping. Never. We always see the moon being mentioned specifically, or the stars being mentioned in the backdrop for timekeeping. But we never see the sun, in terms of a year being calculated based on the sun. We know the sun does play a role, but the sun is not determining when the month and the year start and finish. It's an indicator, but the moon and the lights that were created before the sun and moon are more active, more active indicators of the year. And you don't see this until you don't see this clearer until you go into Solomon talking about it, or into the books of wisdom that Solomon didn't write. Sirach talks about it in chapter 43. Solomon talks about it in chapter 13. When we go into Psalms 104, we see when we go into Psalms 104, we see that the sun, the moon was given for the Moedim, verbatim. The moon was given for Moedim. It specifically says the moon was given for Moedim. Now, when we go back into Genesis, we see that these lights were also given for signs, seasons, Moedim. So now we go into Leviticus chapter 23. We see these are my Moedim. These are my feasts, but in the first verses, it should say it's as Moedim in the Hebrew. So we see the Moedim are determined by, according to King David, the Psalms, and Genesis, by these lights in the firmament, specifically, that were created before the sun, moon, and stars, and by the moon, according to Psalms 104, verse 19. We see it mentioned, specifically. So we have these two celestial bodies or groups being used to determine the months, because the Moedim are determined by the months, the Moedim of the first month, the Moedim of the seventh month. Now, signs, seasons. So now we see that these lights in the firmament, the appearance of these lights, now we see they also play a role in that first Moedim, which is the Shabbath, which coincides with the night, coinciding with the moon, coinciding with, it's dark, stars are out, the moon is ruling now we're in a new day.
So I can confess that all this time I was thinking, when I say this time, I mean over the last, I'd say 5, 6, 7 years, I've been thinking probably naively, that the sun was specifically established for the calculation of the years.
The
But
years.
looks like I have learned something tonight. And then more specifically, I'd like to ask, you had said that you, with your own eyes, saw in the book of Jubilees that the assignment for the calculation of the years is given incorrectly to the sun, and that departs from the Torah's larger teaching that the opposite is true. I'd like to find where that is, because I don't recall where I've seen that in the book of Jubilees.
Okay.
I believe that I've read it in its entirety several times over the years.
Okay. I don't know if anybody has the document that I had written. It was called Understanding the New Moon. I think
I think I've seen that and read that.
now if you go into that, if you go into that document, it tells you in Jubilees chapter 6, verse 36 through 37, quote, and walk according to the feast of the Gentiles after their error and after their ignorance. For there will be those who will assuredly make observation of the moon, how it disturbs seasons and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon.
Okay. Well, let's talk about this, because
Yeah.
my understanding of that scripture particularly is that, once again, the Goyim are incorrectly observing by sight even that the calculation of the moon is thus and that, and 3/4 and a third, and that the grander book is stating that that's an error of the Gentiles.
Yeah, well, look again, looking at the text, it's criticizing people, telling you that this is their error, that they're observing the moon, and they're observing how the moon does disturb the seasons and comes in year. Now I don't have the whole context, in my notes right here. My focus was on my focus was on establishing, because I don't have the Book of Jubilees before me. I just quoted it from the paper that I wrote. Was that he gives the sun as light by day and the ordinance of the moon and the stars by night. If you read, and I don't want to go too far off of that book, Jubilees, in that chapter, but if you read it, it tells you that you're going to have to start using the, I don't know if somebody wants to pull it up real quick, that you're going to have to start using, because I got like different platforms that I'm using right now, but it tells you that you're going to have to start using the sun, basically, and that's the gist of the criticism. It tells you in verse, I'm looking at it now. It tells you, for I know.
What verse? Chapter 6, verse what?
35. For I know, now for I know, and from henceforth will I declare it unto thee. and it is not for of my own devising. For the books written before me and on the heavenly tablets and division of days is ordained, lest they forget the feast of the covenant and walk according to the feast of the Gentiles after their error, after their ignorance. For there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year, 10 days too soon. For this reason, the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order and make an abominable day the day of testimony, and an unclean day a feast day. And they will confound all the days, and the holy with the unclean. And the unclean day will be holy, for they will go wrong as to the months and Sabbaths and feasts and jubilees. For this reason I command and testify unto thee, that thou mayest testify to them, that after thy death thy children will disturb, so that they will make the year 364 days only. And for this reason they will go wrong as to the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths and festivals, and they will eat all kinds of blood and all kinds of flesh. So I don't know who he's talking about, but King David didn't do this. Hamashiach didn't do this, you know, and we didn't do this. And also, so I'm looking for the chapter, but my criticism is that there will be those who will assuredly they say that the moon disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year, 10 years too soon. For this reason, the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order and make an abominable day the day of testimony. And this is one of the problems. There is no such thing in the Bible as an abominable day, and an unclean day a feast day. There's no such thing in the Bible as an unclean day. A feast day falls on any day of the week. So this is written from a preconceived notion, like certain practices are already being, observed. And he talks about, certain things are already being observed, and certain things are abominable. But he goes back to, Noah, and he's saying that there's an order that's already ordained. What is that? There's an order that's already ordained for these things to be done on the heavenly tablets, with the divisions of the days. Now we read the whole chapter, and I'm not ad-libbing, but I'm kind of skimming as we're talking, and it says, and there is no neglecting this command for a single year and all the days of this commandment will be 52 weeks of days, and these will make the entire year complete. That's a lie. That's a solar year, and it's wrong for a solar year, because we know that if you do just 52, times 52 times 7, you get 364, and that is going to push. If you just do 364, that's going to push, and that's going to start to push the year further and further back. Over a 30-year period, you're going to be, roughly a month off, But the moon itself is self-regulating because it's going according to the constellation. If you go only by the sun or only by the moon, you're going to go off. But if you go by the moon, according to the constellation, the lights of the firmament, you're going to be, you're going to be okay. So this is telling us that, oh, you got 52 weeks of days for an entire year. And we know a lunar year can have 12 months or 13 months. We know that. So you're not always going to have 52 weeks. So already we see that there's a problem because the Bible says Shana. Now, this author did not take into consideration one thing. All right. This author did not take into consideration one thing. And here's Amaria right here. I don't know if y'all can see him. Amaria, okay. What's up, Ariashan doing? All right, Amaria, tell us about the word. Tell us about the word Shana, what it means and where it comes from. Shana, what does it mean and where does it come from? What does that word mean? Shana. Come on, don't keep us waiting. We're on the edge of our seats. Yeah, it deals with movement. It deals with movement. So it says signs, seasons, days, and years. Which one of those four words is rooted in the word Shana? Years. Okay. So what does Shana mean? Shana means two. Everybody hear that?
Yeah,
As in Shani, exactly. So the root word of the word year is two. Now explain to us what that two means and indicates. The year. Mm-hmm. We with you, Mario. Come on, don't keep us waiting on the edge of our seats.
The year being complete.
What does it two mean, though? What is the... Anybody in the audience over here want to give it a shot, give it a go? Anybody? Two? Okay, the word year in Hebrew means two. Two, a year is a what? Give me the most generic word that you can give me for year. A year is a what? A cycle. So the two indicates what? The two indicates what? The start of the second cycle, right? And the start of the second cycle is where? Where the first cycle started, more or less, right? Which goes into telling us what? What is the first year? What is the first month of the year called? Abib. What does Abib mean? To spring forth. The beginning, the strength of the years, new growth, right? So what is the point we're getting at? The point we're getting at is that according to the word year itself, it's not a static 52 weeks and that's it. It goes according to the what? The movement of the celestial bodies in relationship to what? What did he say was for signs, season, days, and years? The circle of stars or the lights of the firmament, right? So the year, the backdrop of the year, signs, season, days, and years, is those stars in the background. Nobody talks about that. See, what the author is talking about in Jubilees is 52 weeks, that's it. But the Bible says, no, your year is going to be determined according to these lights. See, whoever wrote Jubilee didn't understand the mystery of how these lights before the sun, moon, and star are supposed to be used to determine a year.
I'm glad you said that. Can I comment?
Let me finish. So when it rolls back into that first, the Most High said what? Keep the Passover in its what? Season. What constellation does Passover happen in? What constellation? What constellation is the middle of the month going to be happening in? The 7th constellation. What constellation is the 7th month and the 15th day of that feast, that new moon happening in? In the 1st constellation. They're opposites. They're at take 12 o'clock and move 1 to the 12th position. What's going to be in the 6th position? 7. So Abib is at 1, and Tishrei, or the 7th month, is at in the 7 o'clock position. So when the new moon's when the sun is in the 1st constellation, and we have that new moon happening in that 1st constellation, what happens when the 15th day, 14th, 15th day rolls around? Now that new moon is 180 degrees away from when the cycle first started, which is going to be in the 7th constellation. Sign, that's why he said you keep it in its season. So nobody's talking about what he gave us for sign and seasons, which is these lights. But then later on, we see in Psalms 104, right, that the moon also fits into this configuration for the seasons. He says that verbatim. So it's not a static number of, 12 months or 13 months or 52 weeks. It's according to the movement of everything, the sun, the moon, through this path, this circle of stars that are up there for us to use to calculate to be for signs, moedim, seasons, days, yomim or yomamim, and years to calculate to fit into the calculation of the Shana. This is from creation. So this ordinance can never be broken. Once we read something where somebody says this ordinance is broken, we are no longer a nation before the Most High no more, because that's his promise to us through Jeremiah. If these ordinances are not before me no more, if they stop doing their jobs, if you understand what their jobs are, then Israel not a nation before me no more. So, okay, what you want to say, Kwamelek?
In verse 35 of the 6th chapter of the book of Jubilees, I'm reading from my Derek Shaver version. I interpret the verse 35 and verse 36
That's
as warning. Unless the observance of these years, these jubilees, as I call it, are done according to how it's inscribed in the heavenly tablets, that y'all gonna start doing as the Gentiles do and observe in error the keeping of the moon, that it comes in 10 days earlier. In other words, you're going to follow them in their footsteps and their evaluations that the moon comes in 10 days early.
But no, but this is what I'm saying. It's imaginary. There's no culture that didn't know how to keep a calendar. It's imaginary. That's never happened. There's not one culture on the planet Earth that did not know how to use the solar and lunar calendar. It's not true. There's no Gentile people on the earth that messed up the calendar. It doesn't exist. That's what I'm saying. So it's yeah, go ahead. Now, no, I'm getting all loud, but go ahead. Yeah, let's.
It's, I believe, predicting that there will be future generations of Gentiles that keep the moon in error.
Maybe it's given a forecast, but it still doesn't negate from the fact that they're telling us that a complete year must have 364 days, and that's not true. In verse 32, it tells us something that's not biblically true. It's giving us the only way you count the days is sun up and sun down. So it's telling us to use the days, and that the days will be 4 seasons of 91 days each. And that's not true.
Okay,
So now listen, the Bible in Genesis in Genesis chapter 8, either look in Genesis 8:32 real quick or 6:32. It only gives us the Bible only gives us 2 seasons, hot and cold, and each one operates under 6 constellations. This has given us the 4 seasons according to the solar division of equinoxes and solstices. It's not giving us a biblical, it's not giving us a biblical timekeeping method. It's extra biblical. The Bible tells us that the constellations is what's going to, the lights of the firmament is what's going to determine when we calculate our years. This is saying, forget all of that. Just count 364 days and you'll be all right. So this is actually giving us something that's going to throw us off, because if we're only doing 364 days, that means that every year we're losing a day of the sun itself rotating and traveling within the constellations. All right, you're losing days, and that's why we have to take the what does it say?
While the earth remaineth.
While the earth remaineth. Go ahead.
Seed time and harvest.
Seed time and harvest, which is 2 seasons, hot and cold. Go ahead.
And cold and heat.
And cold and heat. Go ahead.
And summer and winter.
Summer and winter. Go ahead.
And day and night.
Day and night. Go ahead.
Not cease.
Shall not cease. So the Bible is telling us that we got these 2 seasons, hot and cold. The question is, the seasons are determined inside of the constellations, not 365. Winter doesn't start, spring doesn't start, your planting time doesn't start the same day every year. It's according to what constellation you're in. It's according to when your first frost is going to be and your last frost. This verse is not taking into consideration the natural cycle of the moon and the constellations. It's only counting days. It's a purely solar system. It has nothing to do with the moon. And it's off. It's wrong. And that's why when you say, now when it says observe the year, that 365 is a complete year. And now look what it tells you. If you don't do this, what happens? And they will not disturb its time from its day and from its feast, for everything will fall out in them according to their testimony and they will not leave out any day or disturb any feast. That is not true. That's not true either. You are going to disturb the feast because you're not going to have a barley harvest every 365 days from when you celebrated 364 days from when you celebrated Passover last year. You're not going to have it. You're going to go back further and further and further. And before you know it, in your lifetime, they're going to start observing Passover in the wintertime. Because every year it's going to go back one day if you're only doing 365. So what the calendar that they're giving you, it's illogical and it's mathematically erroneous just by what they say. They're saying if you use this 364-day calendar, you will not disturb the time and you will not disturb the feast. That's not true.
May I be heard on that point?
Yeah, but once I'm gonna give you the last word, the last midrash on this point, and then we got to move back to the Leviticus. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I have that specific statement underlined in detail. I think in my third reading of this book, I called up my Hebrew brother Mattiyahu to discuss this particular apparent error. Now I'm saying that comparatively to what we hear NASA say and how we reconcile the 365 days.
All right.
Which I think the Gregorians and those who keep that calendar have come up with this concept of a leap year. And I believe it was about that time I was talking to Madiahu, the concept that the Israelites keep a leap year as well, but it's based on what the Torah says to do. So I have it underlined here in particularly, and command thou the children of Israel that they observe the years according to this reckoning, 364 days, and these will constitute a complete year, and they will not disturb his time from his days and from his feast, for everything will fall out in them according to their testimony, and they will not leave this out. They will not leave out any day, nor disturb any feast. There is a deeper understanding in the scripture, and I know this not just because of reading it one time like today or, some time ago. I've studied this, referring to certain Zaquans or elders, and in particular this book, this particular chapter even, and even another chapter talks about how these components are reconciled back into themselves according to the Torah. And with that, I will rest for now. I think I even need to go back and reread it so that I can understand what I had concluded with Madiyahu some time ago. And when I was doing it, I wasn't even sure at that point. So
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back and read this because I have reason to believe that other aspects of this book of Jubilees reconfirms its establishment of the Sabbath and the correct order of certain milestones that we know to be true in the life of the Israelites, and namely one of those is the life and times of Sarah, the wife or woman of Abraham. And
Okay.
it specifically serves as a map, or what do you call it, a legend.
Okay, right.
Of these years calculated. So hopefully we can get to that tomorrow. All praise to the Most High, and may these things, these yearnings and learnings, these teachings and preachings and reaching for the edification of
Like
the
a
house
dead
of
poet.
all Israel.
Last poets over
Ellen,
there.
my flesh or yours or anyone else. All praise to His name.
All praise to the Most High. I think Shara was trying to say something earlier. You remember what you were trying to say?
I do remember.
Well, let me. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I don't remember what you guys said exactly. That was in specifically you. That was in relation to, but
Hard to hear.
Cut that off, please.
it was a while back. I'm not exactly sure what y'all said, but I remember something about an abomination day, abominable day.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that the only time I've ever seen that was when you're talking about the Babylonian days, and they're obviously from Babylon.
Yeah, they did do that.
Yeah,
like certain days auspicious and
their
you're
Sabbath
right.
was an abomination, which was every seventh day after their new moon. And I don't know exactly how that worked, but that's the only time I've ever heard that.
Yeah, you're right. The Babylonians did talk about how certain days were, days of not to do, were abominable days not to do certain stuff, and bad days and bad omen type of days.
Right.
And that's kind of my objection is that they start off by telling you, oh, you're going to be keeping a holy day on an abominable day.
Mm-hmm.
But the Most High said, the scripture says common days, and He sanctified days. It doesn't say nothing about Him ever making any abominable days. So that's what I'm saying. This is an extra biblical concept. We don't see that concept in the Bible of this is an abominable day to keep the Sabbath, or you're keeping the feast day, but it's really a day of an abomination.
Mm-hmm.
Like what? Yeah.
Those two things again ring similar with the Babylonian observations and what I guess Jubilee is trying to say.
Yeah, it does ring of a very of an extra biblical culture, of an extra biblical extra biblical directory point of reference. The point of reference is does not seem, to be coming from the Bible, because it's using language that we don't use. It's using, verbiage that, that we aren't familiar with, and it's telling you like, oh, if these, and we have firm, and it puts a lot of emphasis on it kind of guides you gently into a clear framework of this is what you have to do. This is the time frame you have to do it in, and this is what's going to happen if you don't do it this way. And here we are 2,000 years later doing it the way that we read it in the scriptures, and looking at the Hebrew, as well as the Greek, and from the Greeks up to now, everybody uses the same word. Everybody's using the word month. From month comes from month, a part, a part of the moon. And oddly enough, and this is kind of what's odd about this, is we only see, well, I'm not going to get into what's odd about it per se, but we do see, and I talked about this before, we do see a similar solar system from Egypt that was adopted by Ethiopia. So we do see a system like this, and they would have, 3 or 4 extra days that would go in, into that month, into that month system that they had. But we don't see this type of calendar here in any of our, our records. The solar year has its place. It has its place in a, civil type of scheduling and planning, just to, hey, August 1st, I need you back here. But in terms of the feast days, and in terms of the Sabbath and and the months, it's appearing to give you a static system of time, when the biblical time is dynamic. I can appreciate the solar system, but it would be very difficult to utilize a functional 364 system of time and always do things the same day, the same month, 52 weeks. That would be perfect 62 weeks of 7 days. It would be difficult, to do things. Now you can assign a month name and a certain number of months, like the Americans did, just like the Gregorian calendar does. If you say your birthday is June 7th, every year, hey, June 7th, March 25th, every year, March 25th. Now, some March 25ths may be in Adar 2. And some March 25ths may be in Abib. Passover changes every year. With a 364-day calendar of a certain amount of days, a certain amount of months fixed on 365 or 52 weeks, Passover never changes. Day of Atonement never changes. It all, stays the same. You follow that calendar no matter what. That's not going to work for you. We're dealing with agriculture. You can't harvest in the 7th month if your 7th month is static. Because any scientist knows if you're running, if you're running, if you're counting $364, and sometimes it's if you're counting 364 days only, but naturally sometimes it's everybody else is counting 365 and 366 every 4th year, right? And then other people are using the moon and looking at the constellations. That 364, okay, I'm counting 364 now, January 1st. When I get to 364, I'm gonna be on December 30th, right? When I do it next year, I'm gonna be on December, I'm gonna be on, December 29th. So my year is getting, my calendar is telling me I'm right, but everybody else's calendar and the farmer's almanac, I can't use that to plant. I can use the Hebrew calendar to plant, to figure out time, to know when it's going to be hot outside and cold outside. But if you are constantly using a calendar that does not, that's only taking into consideration days, superimposed over a 365, 366, and our calendar, the moon is perfect. It's perfect.
Okay. So if I can comment on a couple things, then I'll get off it for now.
Okay. Yeah, hey, Carmelec, I said the same thing.
Okay, so I'm gonna give this 60 seconds of commentary, then I'll get off it. I could have been incorrect when said the Mayahu saw things my way those few years ago.
Okay.
Go back to my notes and I have to get back into prayer.
Okay.
Also appreciate what Shara. Is that how to say your name, Shebrew?
Come.
Okay. So I appreciate what you said about these abominable days. And there was a contemporary conversation that Jay Abraham, if I could get him to come off of mute for a second and comment on our quick discussion, long discussion on not only Project.
Well, you know, while you waiting on Jay, why don't you click your heels 3 times and say there's no place like home?
So, Jay, if you could come off mute, let's talk about how the certain president currently in America was talking about taking our holy day,
Minus Shabbat.
the
Shabbat,
Shabbat, the seventh day, and making that an official national holiday, which looks like it's going in the right direction, but in the small print,
low.
it shows that successors can make that day even an abominable day. Jay, are you able to come off mute and speak to this point? All praise to the Most High. So, hopefully we can get into these matters only to prove that the gathering, the ecclesia, or I should say that other word that starts with the kaf, proves out the wisdom and knowledge of the Israelites. Not that so and so is right, Trump is right or wrong, or that I'm right. It's for the purpose, I believe, this discussion is for the purpose of bringing knowledge and wisdom to the house of Israel. And with that, I yield.
Okay. All right, Sharad, we kind of took over your microphone time. You want to conclude or respond or give feedback for anything that I or Baba Kwamelek said as the last absolute entry into this conversation on this particular topic? Feedback, feedback, responses. So we'll give you, we'll give you every. I'm not gonna say that. I was gonna say we'll give you every woman's dream, the last word. You know what I'm saying? We'll give you the last commentary on this matter. Shoot.
I guess the only thing I can really say is that when we're dealing with, I guess, reckoning what the Bible says and how we're applying it, the standard is, I'm going to say comical books, the comical books, like the Genesis,
The standard books.
These are the standard books. And then, something that's going to try to take us away from that, I would think twice about incorporating it into, my standard of belief and promotion. Yeah.
Fair enough. We ain't gonna comment on that. Fair enough. We said we're gonna, hey, fair enough. Okay, now, hey Jay, wake up, man. All right, Masha. Let's let Masha weigh into what you got to say, Masha. Come on, give us some feedback, Masha. And look, Kwame Lekman, we gotta try not to. We gotta kind of look. Okay. Masha, go ahead, man. Tell us something.
Well, one thing that I noticed about Well, first thing I want to say is that I learned a lot about things I didn't know before. And also that like I will say that I've been studying Genesis for some time now. I'm coming towards the end of it, but every now and then when I read Genesis, or every now and then when we have these talks about other books and the days and months and weeks and and Genesis 1, it really just shows how important it is, how important Genesis 1 is, to our understanding. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of, compare and contrast in Genesis 1. There's a lot of duality in Genesis 1. And it's easy for anybody to read Genesis 1 from face value. But when you really study the depths of Genesis 1, it really helps you understand, or it really helps you, understand. It really helps you distinguish between what's right and what's wrong. And, that's something that I could say was a deep part of this whole conversation. But I yield with that.
Okay. All right. Ashan, you want to say anything? Amaria, what you got for us, man? Anybody got anything? No? All right. Now, verse 17 tells us again, reiterates. 14, hey, treat each other fairly. 15 and 16, this is what you do. This is how you give the people the money. This is how you pay for the land, according to how much is left to produce on it. And verse 17, again, reiterates, don't oppress people. Okay? Don't oppress anybody. In these matters, don't oppress your fellow. Okay? Amen. Okay. Now, we're going to verse 18. 18 tells us the consequences of our positive moral conduct, our positive reward, right, for treating people with respect, not price gouging, not lowballing, not taking advantage of people. Yahweh says, if you do my statutes and my judgments and keep them and do them, you're going to dwell on the land in security. Which means what? Which means that now, when you think security, first thing that comes to your mind is what? Protection against somebody bothering you, right? But let's stick to the theme. The theme is what? Agriculture, land, and nature. So I also need security from flooding. I need security from landslides, right? I need security from sinkholes. I need security from not being able to find water when I need it. So the security that Yahweh gives us is, I got civil and societal, but it's also a natural protection, a protection against the elements or the adverse or negative conditions, emergency disaster conditions that a flood can have. Wind coming and blowing off your roof, wind coming and blowing down your crops, bugs coming, eating your food, right? So that includes pesticides. That includes the wild beasts. So Yahweh said, if you do my judgments and statutes, you're gonna have civil protection, society protection. Okay. So that's all we have to do. We're gonna dwell on the land in confidence and in security. All right. So this is something very big. It gives us a correlation between our conduct and Yahweh's treatment toward us. You do what you're supposed to be doing, you won't have anything to worry about. Okay. Now the next verse, verse 19, moves it into agriculture. All right. The land is going to give you produce. You're going to eat to fullness, which means you're going to appreciate and be content with the food. And you're going to dwell confidently, upon the land. All right. So you're going to have blessings from your food, from your goats, your sheep, your cows, your birds, and you're going to appreciate what Yahweh is giving you because you're doing what he said to do. So these things apply in the spirit of the law in our lives also. Okay. Now, finally, we have the question, what's going to happen on the 7th year? And we already know in the 6th year, Yahweh is going to give us enough for all the time that we're missing. How many? You're not there. That you're going to get enough for all of these years, that you may have a compromising harvest. Okay, from year number 6. Okay, year number 6, Yahweh is going to command a blessing of the 6th year. Everybody hear what I'm saying? He's going to command the blessing of the 6th year. So now listen. So in that 6th year, you're going to get fruit for what? Year number 6, year number 7, and year number 8. You're going to get 3 years worth of growth. Everybody understand that? So, man, I will be like, man, it's about to be Jubilee. It's about to be let me 7th year. I'm gonna plan on the 6th year. I gotta have my land on the 6th year. You know why? Because the scripture says that in the 6th year, I will command the blessing upon you in the 6th year, and it will bring forth fruit for 3 years. And you shall sow in the 8th year and eat of the old fruit until the 9th year. Until her fruits come in, you shall eat of the old store. So year 6, year 7, year 8. We eat in year 8. We got stuff stored in year 8. 9th year, we plant. We start planting Abib, and then bam. When Tishrei, the 7th month, comes around, we got this harvest now. Still probably got stuff left over too. Because we only had 1 year we couldn't plant. 7th year. So the 8th year we planted. But Yahweh gave us 3 years. All right, so that's the answer to that question. So now, in summary, when we see let's see. When we see in verse 18 and verse 19 that Yahweh is going to give us the blessing and we're going to do all safely and we're going to be protected, you know what that is? that's an involuntary cause and effect, meaning we just act normal, act natural, and we get this super spiritual protection from our land, from famine, from invasion, and we confident, and we all going to be eat and be full. Because you would think, oh, we can't plant this year. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if all of the farmers in Mexico and in America and in Turkey say, we're not going to plant nothing this year? What's going to happen? You see, they have a problem. You'd have a problem. But Howard's saying, nah, no problem. All right. Now, real quick, I don't want to be too long-winded. You know.
Let me write that down though before you go on.
What's that?
Let me write that down. You call it involuntary blessing. What was it?
Well, I said involuntary cause and effect.
Involuntary
Cause and effect. Because you're not doing nothing, you know, you automatically get this, in other words. It happens automatically. You don't got to do nothing for it.
Wow. So this is like none of these diseases, and also like being in the land of Goshen.
Sounds like it. Sounds like it, because he says that you're going to be satisfied with your food. You're going to dwell safely and confident in your land. And, you know, you're going to be protected. Verse 18 and 19, they lay it out. You know, verse 18 puts it on the statutes, of course, emphasis on the one about the land and not, you know, exploiting people. And then verse 19 says the land's going to give you the produce, and you're going to do it confidently, and you're going to eat to fullness. You're going to eat to a fullness. And, you know, again, I keep saying this, and I don't know why. The only time I've ever felt this way is when I was living in Turkey. You know, when I was living in Turkey, literally hey, you know, full, never, just the food was, when I say you could eat what you want to eat, whatever vegetable and fruit you wanted, and get full off of it, that's exactly what I mean. And you don't really experience that in America. There's always what do you call it, Amaria? A rationing of some sorts. There's always a rationing of some sorts, a restriction of some sorts. So imagine your mother and father telling you, hey, son, hey, daughter, you know, any fruit or vegetable you see in that kitchen, you can eat it, bake with it, or cook it to your heart's content. Right? And that was our life in Turkey. That was our life in Turkey. So we have experienced this, and I tell you something else. Hamashiach didn't write letters to nobody else except the people in West Turkey, from 7 churches in the Asia Minor, and that's where we were, by the church, between the church of Ephesus and the church of Smyrna, but closer to Smyrna, what they call Smyrna, Izmir, Smyrna, Izmir. All right, Smyrna. All right. So we've seen a portion of this, all these elements together. Eat until you content. Nobody's price gouging. Nobody's lowballing you. If anything, you going in saying, hey, man, I don't know this. No, that's the price. They give you, you know, you go and get the stuff, and they giving you extra stuff. You say 'iki kilo, be it iki, right? You say 'iki kilogram, which is 2 kilograms, and they give you what is it? They give you was it buyuk is half? they give you iki buyuk. They give you 2.5 kilos on a house. Buk, something
That's big.
big. What's the word for half, man? Besh is 5. Yemen Besh is 10 and 5. Anyway, they give you extra. So we've seen this, and reading this excites me because I've had a glimpse of it. I've had a, pun intended, I've had a taste of it. And these are from people that are just treating each other respectfully in a society. Okay. So that's verse number 19, the blessing. Now, what I want to go into now, and if you look in the Greek, who's with me? Who's with me on YouTube still? Jay, Kwamalek, Masha, y'all on YouTube?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Somebody asked a question. Let's go into this real quick. Buchuk or Buchuk? 2 dots.
No dots.
Yeah. Where?
You got fingers.
Buchuk. Okay, Buchuk. Okay, now, Amaria, if you look at verse 20, okay, if you look at verse 20, in the English it says, if we do not sow or gather, if we do not sow or gather, which in the Hebrew it says ne'esef, or ne'esof. It says ne'esof, which is like add stuff up, add together, bring together. In the Greek it says synagomen. All right, it says synagogomen, like synagogue. Very interesting. So synagogue is a word, and in this place it means gather together. Gather your produce together, different areas, and you bringing it together. Everybody understand? So it's not being used here as a noun for a place like a synagogue. It's being used as a verb, synagogomen, which means to gather. Now, so I want to bring out about this. So now we have a physical space in this chapter. Nowadays, the word is used, synagogue, as a physical space versus a general comparative status, which is you as the ecclesia, you as the people coming together. Synagogue in the Bible, the New Testament, is usually a place, but ecclesia is always people. Synagogue means to bring together. Ecclesia means called out. So synagogue is used to talk about the whole nation in the Old Testament. So in the New Testament, we see ecclesia being used for those people that have been called out of the General Assembly of Israel into a transition of covenant going into toward the new covenant under Hamashiach. So ecclesia is the same as the Hebrew word kahol, or you would say kahal. All right, which could be like a convocation, a gathering, or a summons of people coming together for a specific event. Like when the Most High called us together at Sinai. Get everybody at Sinai. That's like a ecclesia, a kahal, or kahal. Now, Synagogue is the Hebrew answers to the Hebrew word edoh or redoh, which is a congregation. It's a community. It's normally a permanent body or society of people, whether they gather together or whether they not gather together. All right. So now, in the context of the New Testament, the redoh of Israel is static. That's the body. Boom. The building. The Kehillah, as it's called today, which is Aramaic influence, but in the Hebrew it's kohal or kahal or kohol because it has a kamatz. It's going to be more dynamic. That's why they say the ecclesia at Ephesus, the ecclesia in Smyrna, the ecclesia in Philadelphia, the ecclesia in Pergamum, all these other places. And it was constantly being built onto and added onto. That's why I say many people were added to the kahal or the ecclesia. So I just wanted to use this context of the Greek word to show you how the Greek text uses words that we're familiar with, but to understand the meaning of it, we have to see it in the context that it's used. The synagogue is a word that means a gathering of the people together. And ecclesia, mistranslated to mean church, are those people that were called out of that synagogue setting, and which takes me back to my original statement when we first started, and they started to go into people's houses, ecclesia, not neglecting the synagogue or the temple, but adding more, to their gathering responsibilities. So we have three interacting, let's call them institutions. And for edification's sake, I'm going to use the word church, even though it doesn't really technically apply, but that's what we're familiar with in the Bible. So we have the temple of Israel, where everybody had an obligation. We have the synagogues of Israel and of the Roman Empire, where Israelites would gather to pray, and mostly to study and learn the Torah, and for civil matters. And then on top of that, we have the called out ones, the church, the ecclesia, the body of the people, who would get together on a daily basis and talk about prophecies about Hamashiach, mysteries of the Bible, that would drink wine and eat meals and fellowship together, eat bread, break bread. And this was part of a regular meal gathering. It was like a social event. It was like, having a brunch or lunch every day with brothers and sisters in the same vicinity. So they would get together and say, hey, we're going to get together, we're going to eat this food, and we're going to talk about Hamashiach. We're going to talk about these prophecies. And that's what they would do. So the ecclesia developed beside the synagogue structure. And I wanted to bring that out again. I wanted to bring that out just because we often look at these as two competing institutions. The church, technically in the Bible, is a corporal institution, not a physical building institution. All right. Just like you can have a business and you could be based at your house, a home-based business, but you got people out there doing marketing and sales for you that don't come into your place. And then we have a business meeting, you're going to have it where? At your house. But now when you're dealing with people that's outside of that home structure, now you're going to go to another place, the synagogue, for example. So I just thought it was very interesting looking at the Greek that it uses that word synagogomen, which means we gather. And you can see the closeness that it has to the word synagogue. All right. And then we see this word church. And you have to rewire your brain to replace what you think of as a church, the building. That's not what the Bible is talking about when it says church. Well, when it says ecclesia or kahal. When it says kahal, ecclesia, or the English Bible church, it's talking about these people that were getting together, that were believers, that were meeting outside, that were meeting at people's houses. In other words, it wasn't a central, it wasn't focused on this building. It was focused on the people themselves. It's almost like, think of the word church like you think of the word team, right? The team can play in Texas. The team can play in New Mexico. The team can play in Turkey. The team can play anywhere. They're a team no matter where they are. But the team has a place where they meet. The headquarters for that team. Now that headquarters is not the team, right? It's the team meeting at the team headquarters. If that makes sense. That makes sense? So they kind of meet at these places. All right.
An excellent example. It's excellent.
So to what? So now, and this is the advantage of being an Israelite. When I'm listening to, Edomite, Gentile, not Christian, but churchians, they always put the synagogue and the church, ecclesia, against each other. But we read in two places about the Sabbath, right? In Luke chapter 4 and in Acts chapter 15, that they didn't abandon. We see all throughout the New Testament, they didn't abandon the synagogue. They added another layer, which was the ecclesia, which was the people now that were, that were team Mashiach. So the ecclesia, the church, is team Mashiach, keeping the Torah, walking in righteousness, heresy free. Anything outside of that is not the ecclesia of, so we see the church of God and all of that. It's the ecclesia, the ones that Yahweh had called out from the synagogue structure, the Gentile structure, not to abandon the good things, but to add another layer of goodness to their spiritual lives, because now the promised Messiah was here. So we got more duty and responsibility now. But if I can't make it to the synagogue throughout the week, when am I going to make it? On the Sabbath. Why? Because that's where Moses is read every Sabbath day. So they expected the Gentiles to still go to the synagogue to learn the Torah. But guess what they were doing throughout the week? Meeting together, talking, studying, praying, fellowshipping, sharing stories. Okay. So even the church system we see today, that's not the church system of the Bible, nor is it the synagogue system of the Bible. It's foreign. It's not something that we see, in the Bible. And that's why as we study and learn more and start to, transition to a more first century way of doing things, there are going to be changes, improvements, adjustments, that we make. Everything's not going to, be the same, because you get more information, you get more knowledge, you start practicing things more, and it's an ever, evolving, improving, and maturing process. But now we just have to learn how to transfer this knowledge and there's growth into our own families, because the family has to grow together and the families have to collectively grow together. And I'll end on this note. As I'm reading this chapter, I'm looking at houses in different parts of the country. I'm looking at land in different parts of the country. And a very almost overwhelming thought came to me. And that overwhelming thought was, the biblical system is to buy land outright and to build on it as you go. The evolved modern Gentile system that we have is to buy a house that has some land and pay for it over the next 30, 40, 50 years, or whatever the case may be, and refinance, which is fine if that asset is being used as a true a true credit, or a true asset, not just as a blanket liability. Because when you draw money out of it, you got to have another way to put it back. And the only way to put it back is to employ a certain biblical model where you're leasing or renting this land or this house or this apartment or this half a double to somebody for not 50 years or 5 years, but for 1 year. So we see kind of an overlap where you can take a biblical system and a modern system, and the two can work together to reach the same goal of always having an asset, not being a long-term obligation to owe somebody something. And if you owe somebody something, you have something that's also, this is the lesson. You own this land, but somebody's paying you to use this land. Why? Because this land is producing income for them. So now we shift from looking at things from a commercial perspective to where you may have a property that is what they call mixed use, or land where you have buildings that are mixed use. This is residential for me and my family. Oh, and over here, this garage is being rented to this guy that's paying me $2,500 a month to use this garage. Or this, I'm specifically looking for a home-based business, and this person's going to be paying me, for $750, $1,500, or $3,000 a month for their home-based business and their family to utilize this space. So now we come to a system where we have to be more practical and we have to be more biblical on the choices that we make. And if we misstep along the way, we have to be able to auto correct, taking all of the variables into consideration, consulting with professionals, consulting with wisdom, consulting with the Torah, and see how can we put ourselves in a better situation.
Or the assets we acquire are appreciating.
Appreciating assets, yes. And at the same time, your time doesn't have to be, the asset appreciates. At the same time it's appreciating, do we only want a long-term appreciation? Or do we want, in other words, I got this assets, two types of assets that we have, right? An asset that we own outright and an asset that we have to pay, and we're working toward what? Ownership. We're working toward ownership. So if you have an asset, and that asset, let's take a car takes a good car, may take 30, 40 years to appreciate and become an antique and be worth more than what you paid into it. But does it become an asset? Because maintenance, gas, parts, you get back what you put into it. But a property, let's say a house, you buy a house, it's an asset. You got this house, you pay $800,000 for this house. Now you got to pay that mortgage every month. It's going to appreciate over time, but how much? And what are you putting into it? The money you put into it, and you take out what? Equity? You're taking out money that you're putting into it. So we want the appreciation to come from the real value of that property versus the real equity I put into it. In other words, here's a $1.5 million neighborhood. I got this $400,000-$500,000 auction property. I put 200,000 into it. How much does that pay for it? 5? 4. I put 2 into it, 6. As they say, all in at 6, right? 1.5. I got a $900,000. Now I got $900,000 of equity, not including what I put into it, right? Not including what I put into it. Equity free and clear, not what I put into it. I put 600 into it, right? I could take that 600 out. If I take that 600 out, I still got 900,000 of equity in that property. And you can get an LTV for up to what, like maybe easy LTV for 75, right? Easy LTV for 75. So my point is that we collectively as an ecclesia, there's going to be a time when we have to realize that our best move forward is to consolidate. And with that consolidation, there may have to be liquidations. But if that liquidation takes place and there's a consolidation, Acts chapter 2. And that's the step that Israel has to take. They have to get real assets, real land. Land is the easiest asset that appreciates out of all the other assets you can get, that you can use. Actually, you can buy gold, but you can't use it. You look good wearing it, but you can't use it. You buy land, that land's going to appreciate. I mean, since in the past 5 years, the price of land has almost tripled here in Mexico, and it ain't going down. It ain't going down. That it's not going down, and that's in a rural area. That's not in a metropolis, the metropolitan areas. So we as a people have to look at the land and improve the land, because now we see this agrarian agriculture farm society that we came from. It affects our mentality, and it totally us abandoning it changes how we look at things and how we think about things. So that's the direction we have to go, as a people. So with that, everybody, that's it. That's the spiel. Don't price gouge. Don't price gouge. Don't lowball. Be fair. And that's why when people buy a property, you're selling the house, based on the equity that's inside that property, but that's an artificial thing. If you buy a house, you put $25,000 to build a property, which is easy to build at 25. Anyway, it's easy to get land, improve on it, and resell. Resell that land with the improvements on it. But what this teaches us is to, get the land, but get the land that is going to be desirable for what we as a people are used to spiritually, subconsciously. You know, you can get stuff in Maine or someplace where it's really cold and snow or whatever, but the climate, the southern climate the southern climate in the lower, states are more close to the climate of Israel. It's more close to the climate of Israel. The northern states have their place, have their purpose, but them southern states are the states where you can really do something like ancient Israel, where you can get land cheap, develop the land, farm the land, and this is what they do down south. They lease land to people, down south. I know a guy, I think his family was leasing land for about $100 an acre, but they were leasing 600 acres, right? 600, 6,000, 60,000. So they can pay 60,000 a year for all that acreage, all right? They can pay 60,000 a year for somebody to use that farmland. Okay. So this still goes on, but we're just kind of outside of that because a lot of our focus on intangible resources, intangible ways of generating income, knowledge of things that are new technological creations, and that's fine, but it does not replace your ability to grow food, have space to run around where you don't have to worry about somebody, and to be able to protect what you have. And your neighbors are down the way somewhere. All right. And this is what this is about. Everybody deserves that. So much that Yahweh made laws that don't you give this up, give this back to him every 50 years. You got to get your land back every 50 years, which means you would be no older than 50 years old when your family got their land back. So you would see this, in most cases in your lifetime. If you were born during the 20th year of the Jubilee, you would see it when you were 30. If you were born in the 25th year of the Jubilee, you would see it when you were 25. Born during the 30th year of the Jubilee, you would see it when you were 20. So everybody saw this, and everybody knew you had this. You had this land that you can go back to, that you can use. All right, so that's going to be, where we, as they say, where we land at for the night. All right, my brothers and sisters. That's going to be where we land at. So we're going to close out. We're going to be finished for tonight. Man, it's late. It's almost 1:00 in our time zone. All right, so we'll see everybody in a few hours. All right, so about 13 hours. So Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Sorry for keeping you up so late.
No, don't apologize. No problem. All praise to the Most High, God.
All right, Shalom, Jay. You there with us, Jay? Good night, Jay. All right, Shalom, Masha.
Shalom. Sorry, guys.
All right.
Shalom.
We accept your apology, Jay. Shalom, Khadijah. Hope you sleep, Khadijah. Shalom, Khadijah. All right, Shalom, Mashmaka. And Shalom to Khadijah still awake? Shalom to YouTube and Facebook. And Shalom. Get that. All right.